This video is brought to you by mybookie.ag. What's up, everybody? We are here, and it's going to be an interesting fight night with UFC 301, headlined by Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. Somehow this guy wandered onto a title fight. I like Pantoja. He's a very exciting fighter, except for his last fight, which shows that the saying is true. You're only as good as your last fight, and most people remember you for your last fight. He's been exciting for most of his career, but against Royval, it wasn't too exciting to watch. But even still, as great of a fighter that Pantoja is, it would be insane to see Steve Erceg as the flyweight champion. So that's going to be an interesting fight. I do think that Steve Erceg is a more dangerous opponent than a lot of people imagine. He has a very dangerous skill set that can mesh pretty well with Pantoja. And the co-main event is the other fight that is definitely going to be worth watching. The dark horse of the bantamweight division, Jonathan Martinez versus the returning legend, one of the greatest featherweights of all time, Jose Aldo. The leg kicking contest between these two is going to be super interesting. We have a load of good fighters throughout the card as well, but a lot of people aren't too happy with the quality for a pay-per-view card. I mean, heck, the Whitaker and Hamzat fight night card looks better than this one, if we're going to be completely honest here. But first, the prospect of the night, I believe, goes to both Myktybek Orolbai as well as Joe Anderson Brito. You can also argue for Brener Elvis as well. These prospects are extremely talented, very powerful finishers, exciting to watch, and I do expect them to be ranked fighters in the future. The fighter of the night, I actually think it might be Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo is the biggest Brazilian star on the card. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's making his return, an absolute legend of the game. The stake of the fight, the fighter that's in hot waters, is Anthony Smith. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights, has been looking worse in each one of those, and he's been putting a lot of work into his analysis job and stuff like that, so it seems like he's already looking to transition outside of fighting as more of an analyst of the sport. But for his fighting career, he absolutely needs a win here, which is going to be a tough fight for him. The banger of the night, the most explosive, fun fight on the card, Elvis Brener versus Myktybek Orolbai. These guys are going to go at it from beginning to end. Both put on tremendous pressure on their opponents. Both have a lot of power in their punches and very good submission artists as well. It's amazing to see two young prospects that well-rounded and able to finish the opponent wherever it goes. And finally, the fight of the night, in my opinion, is that main event. Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. Both guys are dangerous on the stand-up in their own kind of way. Steve Erceg is very technical, whereas Pantoja carries a lot of power and brawls it out. But both guys are incredibly technical on the ground. That's going to be a good one. Now, before we get into the featured fights, let's rapid fire through all the other fights before. Alessandro Costa versus Kevin Borjas. Costa, big puncher, big overhands. Kevin Borjas, more composed, straight shots, good movement, but can't defend a takedown for the life of him. Costa takes him down and gets the win. Ismael Bonfim versus the 41-year-old Vinc Pichel. Ismael, younger, more dangerous. Pichel lost to Mark Madsen, is 41 years old, very slow. Definitely have to go with Bonfim. Dione Barbosa, the Witch, versus Ernesta Kareckaite, heavy-handed. Well, watching a lot of her fights, she doesn't seem to be so heavy-handed, but she's 5'9", extremely tall, a striker, throws good punches on the back foot, but not great takedown defense. Barbosa's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, even took down Jose Nunes, could run into issues with the length, but I think Barbosa gets the fight to the ground and gets the win. The Brazilian knockout artist Mauricio Ruffy versus the crafty striker from Australia, Jamie Mullarkey. Mullarkey's a very good striker, very talented, looks like he could be a contender, but his chin fails him time and time again. Very unfortunate. He's one of those guys like Phil Haas who shows to be extremely promising, but takes a shot to the chin and he goes away. Mauricio Ruffy, I believe, is going to be way too powerful and he's going to catch that chin. The Brazilian power puncher Joquim Silva versus the American Drakkar Klose. 35-year-old Silva versus 36-year-old Klose. Klose should get the win if he stays composed. He's more put together overall, whereas Silva could be a bit wild and expose himself. Klose is on a 3-fight win streak, 2 knockouts. Joaquim Silva's coming off a win over Clay Guida and one of the best performances of his career, where he rocked Arman Tsarukyan one time. The fact that he hurt Arman, I guess, is like the biggest moment of his career, and it's going to be the main thing people remember Joaquim Silva for. But I'm going to go with Drakkar Klose by decision. Then we go to two interesting prospects. The power puncher from Brazil, John Silva, versus the elusive and tactical William Gomis from France. John Silva hits like a truck. He's very aggressive with his right hand. Good elbows in tight, does really good off of his pressure. William Gomis moves on the back foot pretty well. Elusive footwork, very fast kicks that you saw against Jose Marcos, but mainly looks for the check right hook on the back foot as he is southpaw. John Silva's orthodox. I think the right hand of Silva should be able to get through at some point of the fight as he closes distance and cuts off William Gomis. So I'm going to go with John Silva by a knockout, but could be a very difficult fight. Definitely not one I would bet on. Then we go to the third best fight on the card, in my opinion. The dangerous submission artist turned aggressive power puncher, the Brazilian prospect Elvis Brener versus one of the son of the Khans, well-rounded and extremely dangerous 26-year-old Myktybek Orolbai from Kyrgyzstan. This is going to be an insane fight. Both guys going to put on the pressure, but Orolbai has more elusive movement, really good with check hooks on the back foot, a sniper-like right straight, good uppercuts, good leg kicks to the body and to the head as Brenner's going to be walking in. But Brener is good off angles that you saw against Guram and breaks you down throughout the fight because of his pressure and good shot selection with his hands. The guy has an insane chin. He should be able to take some good shots from Orolbai, as he did take a lot of big shots from Guram. Orolbai can take the fight to the ground, but Brener is really good at capitalizing on any submission that you present. Orolbai, I do think, has better positioning on top and should be able to bypass a lot of that. And ultimately, I'm going to go with Orolbai. It's a tough fight to call, very close, but I'm going to go with Orolbai, making Genghis Khan proud. The Polish veteran Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Jasmine Lucindo. Crazy that Karolina is on the longest win streak in her UFC career at 38 years old. Now, she's not fighting the same caliber of fighters as she was going up against before, but still impressive to see her riding a win streak like this. But I do think that Lucindo is going to get the victory. She's better on the ground. She's a bit more power, and Lucindo is looking better every time we see her. Then we go to the fourth best fight on the card, the well-rounded, heavy-handed, great submission artist Joanderson Brito from Brazil versus the tactical and technical Welshman Jack Shore. I gotta go Joanderson Brito. He's a bit bigger. He used to fight at 155. Jack Shore used to fight at 135. Joanderson has a physical style, super powerful with his punches, even though he does get wild at times, and Jack Shore will sometimes stick his ground in front of you to look for counter punches or counter kicks to the body, although I do think he is well-rounded enough technically to not get absolutely steamrolled anywhere in the fight. But I do think the physicality difference between the two is going to give the edge to Joe Anderson, winning this by a decision. Then we go to the triangle phenom Paul Craig from Scotland versus the unstoppable blanket from Brazil, Caio Borralho. Borralho has great wrestling, getting better in the stand-up, young and only getting better every time we see him. He might get to the top of the rankings sometime in his future, but man, is he boring to watch. I don't know if he wants to go to the ground with this guy. Paul Craig has submission wins over some of the best 205 fighters right now, and if Borralho tries to take the fight to the ground at any time in the fight, he could get submitted. Paul Craig submitted Magomed Ankalaev with 1 second left of their fight that he was getting dominated in. He also put Jamal Hill into a triangle and kinda submitted him as well. He submitted Nikita Krylov. He beat Andre Muniz on the ground. I think Borralho has better fundamental striking. He's going to stop the takedowns and win this fight through a decision, just doing enough in the stand-up in order to get the scorecards on his side. A smart performance, but probably not going to be too exciting. Then we go to the Brazilian Dynamo, the new invigorated Michel Pereira versus the short notice replacement Ihor Peteria from Ukraine. Pereira was originally supposed to fight Makhmud Muradov, but regardless, at 185, Pereira is a different kind of beast out there. One punch knockout power, faster than most of the middleweights, is competing better than he's ever done in his entire career. And Ihor Peteria has a hard time making weight at 185. He missed the last weight cut, as he's originally a 205er. Very wild striking. I think he gets caught by Michel Pereira. And then on paper, the greatest fighter of all time, if you take away all of his losses and also give him that DQ win against John Jones, the GOAT on paper, Anthony Smith, versus the undefeated Brazilian prospect, Vitor Petrino. I'm surprised this isn't headlining an Apex card. Smith is not doing great. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. His last 2 wins are against the same exact opponent, Ryan Spann, and the last time he beat him was quite close. And Ryan Spann is on a 3-fight loss streak, not doing great himself. Vitor Petrino is way too powerful. I think he takes whatever's left of Smith's chin, gets his big win, and climbs up in the ranking. And if you want to capitalize on any of these fights, make sure you go to mybookie.ag, where I'm going to give you some tips here as well, as they got the best lines in the business. And you can check it out here. Alessandro Costa is a -145 against the +118 Kevin Borjas. Not the best odds to bet on this fight in my opinion. Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. Bonfim should absolutely win this, but he is a massive favorite, so you're not going to get too much return betting on him, but still should win the fight. Barbosa is a big favorite against Ernesta. I don't actually like Barbosa being that big of a favorite. I think Ernesta definitely has a shot at winning this. This is a fight I would avoid. Mauricio Ruffy is a -210 against the +168 Jamie Mullarkey. These aren't too bad of odds, but if you're going to go with Ruffy, I think betting for him to win by knockout is probably the better way to go because that's most likely how he's going to win the fight, given Jamie Mullarkey's chin. Joquim Silva's a plus 146 against the minus 180 Drakkar Klose. I agree with these odds. John Silva's a slight favorite against William Gomis. I said it before and I'll say it again. This is a fight you probably would want to avoid. Both guys can absolutely win this fight. It's very, very difficult to call. John Silva's super powerful, very aggressive. He's got that dog in him, but William Gomis is fast, elusive. He will slow down the fight if he has to with the clinch. That's a difficult one. Brener Elvis is a plus 204 against the minus 260 Orolbai. I think it's a big disservice to Elvis. He was a big underdog against Guram, and now they're making him a big underdog against Orolbai. The guy is good. Brener Elvis is very, very good. I think the odds should be closer, although I think Orolbai is going to get the victory, but because he's that big of a favorite, I might avoid it because the returns aren't necessarily ideal. Unless you're going to go with Brener, right? If you're going with Brener as the underdog, not bad returns if he wins. Jasmine Lucindo is Carolina's a plus 310 against the minus 420. Jasmine Lucindo. Lucindo should win the fight, but that big of a favorite, I don't know. I would put her together in a parlay over just straight betting on her. Same deal with Ismael Bonfim. Joe Anderson Brito is a minus 170 against the plus 138 Jack Shore. I agree with these odds. Paul Craig a plus 430 against the minus 625 Kawa Barallo. If Barallo loses, he had to have done something very wrong in this fight. But he's such a big favorite, I would rather put him together in a parlay rather than a straight bet. Then we go to Michel Pereira, minus 649 over the plus 450 Euro Peteria. What is up with these favorites? Rather than just picking him to win, he should probably win the fight by knockout, which is a minus 153. That's better than the straight bet unless you're putting him together in a big parlay. And if you want to go super safe on a finish, you could pick KO or submission for Michel Pereira at minus 391. Anthony Smith plus 400 against a minus 575 Vitor Petrino. Should be another knockout victory for Vitor Petrino, which is a minus 109. Much better than the minus 575 as a straight bet. Then Jonathan Martinez is a minus 154 against a plus 125 Jose Aldo. This is a fight I would probably avoid because we don't know what kind of Jose Aldo we're going to see. We don't know what his mental state is like coming back into the game. Jonathan Martinez is hungry and better than he's ever been. I'll get into that as to who could probably win this fight. And then Pantoja is a minus 200 over the plus 161 Steve Erceg. I do like Steve Erceg under those odds, but man, probably another fight to avoid in the bets. So you could put up the big parlay with all those massive favorites, but the best is a live betting in my opinion, as you can see how the fight is playing out before you make your bets. And all you have to do is go to mybookie.ag and sign up for their first deposit bonus. With your first deposit, they'll match it all the way up to $1,000, and all you gotta do is use the promo code WEASEL, that's WEASLE, to take advantage of my bookie sign-up offer. It's gonna come with a rollover withdrawal requirement, but make sure to go to mybookie.ag where you can win big. And let's get right into those featured fights. Now we get into that co-main event, the leg-kicking reaper Jonathan Martinez versus the leg-kicking legend Jose Aldo. This is going to be some leg-on-leg violence. Stylistically, right off the bat, Jose Aldo has an amazing skill set to defeat someone like Jonathan Martinez. He is one of the best at defending leg kicks and throwing them in the entire UFC's history. I mean, what he was able to show against Pedro Munoz, who also has a very good calf kick from Orthodox, was a lesson for every fighter in how to defend the infamous, quote-unquote, unstoppable calf kick. But things are going to be quite different because Martinez is southpaw, so he's going to be kicking a lot with his left leg. And because of the open stance, that left leg is going to have an open angle on Jose Aldo's orthodox stance, right? His whole right side is an opening for Martinez. The body and head kicks are especially going to be the dangerous places where Martinez can throw that left kick. And he could condition Aldo like he has done many other fighters in the past. That's the main skill set that's going for Jonathan Martinez here. The body and head kicks off of the power leg. On Jose Aldo's side, he has a clear boxing advantage. Martinez is not bad there, but Aldo has not only progressed his skill set in his boxing tremendously throughout his entire career, but he's actually been boxing since he retired from MMA, learning more of that area, and he's going to bring that into this fight with Martinez, while also carrying over his phenomenal kicking techniques offensively and defensively. You would have to think that the game plan for Jose Aldo is to defend the leg kick, block the body and high kicks, and enter right in front of Jonathan Martinez's face, throwing hands at him. We don't see it too often, but Aldo also has a very respectable wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game whenever he wants to go to it. And I wonder if he's going to go that route here with Martinez. But here's the thing that worries me about Jose Aldo. Why is he taking this fight? Why did he come out of retirement? I believe he only took this to fight out his contract and go do other stuff in boxing or whatever else it is. Is his heart really into the fight? Does he want to win as much as Martinez does? Is his mindset ready for this like Martinez is going to be? Because in Martinez's eyes, he's going up against a legend and he has a lot to prove. In Jose Aldo's eyes, he wants to exit the sport entirely after this fight, so he could do other things. So mentally, I have to go with Martinez's side here. He's also the younger guy, 30 years old, versus the 37-year-old Jose Aldo, who's been knocked out and took a lot of damage throughout his career, which makes me want to pick Jonathan Martinez for this fight, even though Jose Aldo does have the skill set to defeat Martinez. If this was prime versus prime, both guys 100% mentally ready for this fight, I would go with Jose Aldo, like 70% to 30%. But considering all the circumstances, I'm going to go with Jonathan Martinez to win this fight by a decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think Martinez is going to be mentally more prepared for this than Aldo is. He's only getting better every time we see him. He's on the best win streak of his entire career. He's entering his prime. And I think some of the damage off of the body kicks, as well as jabbing away from Jose Aldo from closing in on him, are going to be the main things that he's going to go to before he conditions for head kicks and low kicks. So it's a very tough fight to call, but I'm ultimately going to go with Martinez against one of my favorite fighters of all time. And then we go to the main event. The defending flyweight champion and one of the greatest flyweights of all time already, Alexandre Pantoja versus Steve from Best Buy, who's currently on his side quest, Steve Erceg. The way he's been dressing and walking around for the promotions and interviews and stuff, it looked like he clocked out of his shift. It would make it so funny if he happened to win this fight. He was not supposed to beat David Vorak in his UFC debut. He went up against a ranked guy and beat him as a huge 3-1 underdog. He was a slight favorite against Alessandro Costa, a considerable favorite over Matt Schnell, who does have a glass jaw, if we're going to be honest here. Both guys defeated him, and now he's like a moderate underdog against Pantoja. And I think the plus like 150 odds do make sense and does give him the respect that he probably deserves. A lot of people who aren't in the know of Steve Erceg would think this guy should absolutely lose this fight, but he's got respectable boxing skills, good power. He's no slouch on the ground. Now, he's not going to rival Pantoja, in my opinion. Pantoja's the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the 125-pound division. He has a lot of power, just not great punching technique. If Pantoja starts to learn how to box, if he learns how to throw his hands like Jose Aldo, he's going to be knocking a lot of people out. But he strikes like a brawler, and you saw that in the Brener Moreno fight. Even able to hurt him in the first round, but just not clean technique overall throughout all 5 rounds. And the big thing that's going to go for Pantoja here that might cause a stifling of Steve Erceg is his granite chin. Pantoja is very, very hard to hurt. The only fighter that ever got a knockdown against Pantoja and hurt him to that extent was Davison Figueiredo, the most powerful striker ever at 125. And he was laying the hammer on Pantoja for 3 rounds and couldn't get him out of there. Steve Erceg is clean. He has a really good left hook, clean and precise punches. Actually, really good boxing skill this guy has. Much more technical than Pantoja in the boxing. But the thing that makes Erceg stand out so dangerous is how well he sets everything off of the jab. His jab is the foundation of his striking. It is everything. Faking the jab, pumping the jab, throwing it out there long, stepping with it. Most of his punches come after the jab. Very little telegraph to everything he does in the stand-up. I'm actually quite worried from Pantoja in the striking because he gets super wild sometimes and opens himself up for straight punches. He's just such a tank that he just doesn't feel your punches, man. His attributes in that sense are his way to defeat Steve Erceg in the stand-up. He walks through everything and clobbers him. That's the way Pantoja would most likely defeat Steve Erceg in the stand-up. Sometimes Steve Erceg keeps his head up tall, and you saw him get hit a couple times by Alessandro Costa, as well as Matt Schnell, but he does a good job of swaying and fading out certain directions away from the opponent's overhands and hooks, which are the main weapons that Pantoja uses. I can honestly see Steve Erceg outclassing Pantoja in the stand-up as long as he doesn't get overwhelmed by the volume of those haymakers. We've seen Pantoja literally bum rush opponents, and they could not handle it, like Alex Perez, who just got a great victory over Matthias Nicolau. So if Erceg is the kind of guy that gets flustered from super aggro attacks, he could be in a lot of trouble here against Pantoja. But if he keeps himself composed and picks up with the 1-2 as he's moving away and swaying and fading on those angles, I think he should do a very good job on outstriking Pantoja. He is good enough on the ground as well, so I will not be surprised at all if Steve Erceg actually pulls off this victory. Posure is going to be everything for him. He cannot feel like he's getting overwhelmed. The cleaner the fight is, the more it's going to favor Erceg. Pantoja has to make this fight dirty. He's outranged and he's slower in the stand-up. Man, it's such a tough fight to call. If Erceg can keep himself from getting taken to the ground and be as composed as possible in the striking, I can actually see him beating Pantoja. And note that if you are a betting man, don't just go with my pick here. It can honestly go both ways. Pantoja's going to fight on one way. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to throw overhands. He's going to take punches. He's going to try to get the fight to the ground. This is all going to come down to how does Steve Erceg deal with the aggression. You know what? I'm going to go with the underdog himself, the number 10 ranked Steve Erceg, to defeat Alexandre Pantoja, and I'm going to go by a decision win. I think he's going to win 3 rounds out of the 5. He's going to surprise a lot of people in the beginning of the fight, and because of Pantoja's experience as a veteran, I believe he's going to be able to adjust to whatever happens in the 3rd round and win the 4th and 5th. Steve's about to hand Pantoja the most brutal customer service he's ever seen. That is ultimately the end of the predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you give this a like, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Shama. And yo, Tapuria, please don't pick Ortega over Max.